Hey everybody, Nathan Hale here with another history video. I want to talk a little bit about a cool thing I experienced this past week called the Battleship Texas. I was in Texas. In fact, let me show you where I am. Soak in my little cover here because it's going away. Here we go. So I was in a city called La Porte, Texas, if you were to draw Texas like I'm doing right here. Not the world's greatest Texas, but if you were to go right here, you'd find the city of La Porte. And that is where I was doing a school visit. In fact, the school I was visiting was called Baker Elementary. Hey Baker 6th graders, how's it going? If you're watching this video, I was visiting Baker Elementary, and as I finished the school visit, the teacher said, "You should go and visit the Battleship Texas." And I said, "What's the Battleship Texas? That sounds kind of cool." And she said, "Oh, it's amazing. It's this giant battleship. You should go check it out. It's only 20 minutes away." So I jumped in my car and I drove out to the Battleship Texas. And they were right. It was super cool. It looked like this. It's a giant battleship that is in dry dock there in Texas, sitting on the water. And it's a museum. You can walk around on it. You can go anywhere. For example, you can walk around up here. These people are way too big. You're more like this big. But you can go up these stairs here. And you can go up here, and you can go up here, and you can go up here. You can't go up here unless you have a special tour. And when I got there, it was 5:02, and the Battleship Texas closes its doors at 5:30. But I got to stick my head out right here, and I got to go in there, and I got to go climb all around. It was super awesome. If you're ever in La Porte, Texas, go to the Battleship Texas because it's really neat. In fact, you can go below decks. There's 2 different floors down below, and you can just go anywhere you want. Super interesting. You can stand on the very front of it, or you can look up. Here's looking down on top of these things. These things were called Bofors guns. Bofors is the manufacturer. And you could even climb up here and sit on these things and pretend you were shooting stuff, and they'd pretend you were loading shells into the thing, and they'd be going off. Pretty awesome. You can walk around, look at all the stuff. Everything is mostly kept how it was when they decommissioned this ship in 1948. You can go around and you can just look at all of the stuff. And you can mess with the levers. A lot of things are kind of fused shut because it's so old and because they don't want you actually shooting these guns, but it's super cool. You can look at the very front and look at these giant guns. You can see that they've been sealed off so that they don't shoot anymore, but look at these monster guns, and you can climb clear up here, and it's super awesome. If you ever get the chance, go check it out. Let me tell you a tiny bit about this battleship. It was built in 1910, and it was built with these kind of crazy. Here, let me draw a quick mock-up of our Battleship Texas. It had the huge guns on it right from the get-go in 1910 when they built it, and it had these things called cage masts or lattice masts that were like old-fashioned sailing masts, but they had like a metal cage around it. And they thought if it's got like a metal cage around it, then it will be harder for enemies to destroy the mast in one shot. So it's got these huge masts on it. And it's crazy to think of battleships with giant sailing masts, but in 1910, that's what they had. They had the 2 big guns on the back. That's what it looked like in 1910. I'm sure I'm not getting all the details exactly right, but it had these cool things. And what these were used for a lot was for sighting. They'd put these guys up there to judge the height and the depth and whatnot. And the funny thing was they were harder to destroy than a regular old, sailing mast like this. But the funny thing was the weather was a lot harder on them. So these things took a lot of damage from rain and snow, and they'd bend and stuff. So they retrofitted it, started changing it. By the time World War II rolled around, they had gotten rid of the lattice masts, and they had put on these big tripod-looking things that went up like this, and all of this stuff. So this ship, while it was still, let me go back to the lattice masts. When it had these lattice masts, it was actually in World War I. In fact, according to some historians, this ship, the Battleship Texas, was the first American shots fired in all of World War I. They saw a U-boat when they were escorting somebody, and they fired on it, and it was the very first shots of World War I, which is kind of cool. But after World War I, it continued to do all kinds of stuff, but then eventually was retrofitted, and they got rid of the lattice masts, and they put on these tripod masts that are kind of a little more modern looking for a battleship. It's got stuff going up like this. It's got stuff going up like this, but they retrofitted this massive battleship for World War II, and it did a whole bunch of World War II service. It was in Africa. It was the flagship of the whole U.S. fleet. It went to North Africa, and it did all this stuff. And then in 1942, it took part in D-Day, which is kind of cool. But then it was retired in 1948, and they towed it to Texas, where you get to walk around and explore it to this day, and it's super cool. But I want to talk about a weird thing that I saw on it that I had never known about before. It's a thing called a paravane. See this thing right here? Now, when I saw this thing, I said, hey, look, it's a torpedo. But I had just done some studying on torpedoes for a little short story that's going to be coming out sometime later this year. And I knew that torpedoes were stored in a different way and launched in a different way. And this thing's really big. If you can see the outline of this thing right here, it's kind of a big thing, and it's got wings on it. Torpedoes don't have wings on the front. See the wings on this thing? It's got this big thing and a giant hook right here. It's called a paravane. Anybody know what a paravane is? Because I certainly didn't. I thought this thing was awesome. It's pretty big too. Like if you're standing next to it, it's probably a little taller than a person if it's upright. So I had to go and do some research and find out a little more what a paravane was. Because it's super, like what is this mystery thing? So here's what a paravane does. Whoop. So let's draw the battleship from the front. And here's the water line. Here's those big tripod things, and here's the big guns on it, and here's all the side guns and all that cool stuff, and here's the bottom of the boat. Anyway, when this boat was doing World War I, there were lots of mines in the water. And the mines would be submerged so you couldn't see them. They'd be on chains. The chains would be anchored down to the bottom. You'd have all these different mines, some with the spikes on them, some with this, that, and the other. And a lot of times the Battleship Texas would be out on mine patrol, either mine sweeping or mine laying. And what you do with a paravane is pretty cool. You attach it to the very front, right down here at the bottom of the boat, with a long chain. You tie this thing on. Probably use one of these big ship cranes because it's a big heavy thing to lift it out into the water with its little wings on there. They would hook it onto this chain. So as you can imagine, if you pull fast on this thing, it doesn't have a motor or anything. It's just got these wings on it and a hook on the bottom. If you remember, it's just got wings. It's got a weight on the bottom, it looks like. I'm guessing this is some kind of a weight because that's the bottom of it. This isn't a thing that's being stored sideways. This is the actual way it goes in the water. This is the top. This is the thing that goes on the bottom of it. And this is where they would hook it onto a chain. And you drag it. I'll show the boat from the top. If your battleship is going along like this, and you've got a paravane attached to the front, the faster the ship goes, because these little wings are on it, the further it goes out. It's like a kite. In fact, some people call a paravane a water kite. So it's pulling this thing along, and as it goes faster, it goes out further till it's like this. So if you've got a little metal dummy on a chain that goes as fast as the boat, check this out. It starts catching the mines. Here's the wings on it. Here'd be the weight on the bottom and the one on the top. It would catch the mines. Sometimes it would just sever the cords right there, the chains, and the mines would bob to the surface. The gunners would shoot the mine, and it would explode, and everybody on the deck would go, woohoo! Sometimes it wouldn't cut the chain, and apparently they would just run the paravane right into this thing. It would blow it up. They would either get a replacement paravane or replace this paravane or repair this thing and fix it up. Some serious mine sweepers would have 2 paravanes going, and it would just go along, cut these mines, they'd float to the surface, or detonate them and they would explode. And that is what a paravane is. And that's what I discovered on the Battleship Texas. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for watching.